Hi, everybody. Welcome to another Linfield Coaches CatChat. Joe Stewart out here with head Linfield men's soccer coach Andy Duvall. Coach, how you doing today?
Yeah, I'm good, Joe. How are you?
Doing well, doing well. Let's get into this last weekend. You had the Wits come down to town, and even though when you went up there you were able to get a split, it ends up being an 0-2 weekend for you guys. Let's break down that Whitworth game first. Well, actually, let's kind of talk about one thing I noticed from both the matches, and it kind of stands out a little bit. You give up 2 goals in quick succession in both of those matches, and it seems like that's happened a couple times this year. You give up the goal, and then the guys just don't seem to kind of reset right away. Right. What has happened in those stretches, and particularly against Whitworth and Whitman this last weekend, where you give up the 1, and then all of a sudden, next thing you look up, and it's 2-0 on the scoreboard?
Yeah, so what I can do is I can take a guess, right? I can't know for certain. If you look at the history, the recent history of Linfield men's soccer, it hasn't been a successful one, right, over several years span. The guys know that the efforts that we're putting in right now are to try and reestablish a high level within this program, and we're doing it with a bunch of changes that we've put the guys through. A number of those changes include trying to bring in a lot of youth and players from different environments within the youth game that have given us a good spark in our ability to try and really push this program to a new level. But with that comes the responsibility to know that you are now the new blood that is going to try and help this program move to new heights, right? So with that, you always have in the back of your mind that there has been a history of not really accomplishing what the program wants to accomplish. And I think, as you identified, that was the first thing that my assistant coach and I talked about, Alex Ponce, after the games this weekend, was I think against Whitworth, it was the 62nd and 65th minute we conceded. And then against Whitman on Sunday, I think it was the 24th and 27th minute or something like that, which those little 3-4 minute spans really decided the game. And as soon as we concede a goal against an opponent, right now, our guys who have done so well to work extremely hard to become a better footballing team, they look at those moments for what appears to be 3-4 minutes as some sort of an insurmountable task, right? And so their confidence drops, they lose their focus, and they have a hard time recovering from that. And so, as you indicated, it's happened on more than one occasion this year. And it's tough for the guys to be able to try and immediately rally after conceding a goal, which you can chalk it up to whatever you want. You can chalk it up to inexperience, you can chalk it up to lack of confidence, whatever it is. It's not because they don't have the ability to play the game. It definitely is more mental than it is physical. And we're going to do our best as a coaching staff to try and help these guys weather that and push through it as we get into these next 5 games.
Sure. Let's look at the good, though. Outside of those 3, 4, 5 minute stretches in both of those matches, things seem pretty clean from the other side from the rest of the match. What do you like technically from your side this weekend?
Yeah, I thought particularly in the first half against Whitworth, we come off, it's 0-0. I want to say the shot count might have been 9-5 in favor of Whitworth, somewhere in there. So it was a fairly even match all the way up through that first 45 minutes, and fairly even through the first 10 to 15 minutes of the second half until that 4-minute span where we concede 2 goals. And at that point, we're chasing the game. And so, when you have to chase a game at any level, you definitely are working harder than your opponent in a lot of ways, and your opponent has the upper hand. They've got the confidence. They've got everything working for them. So in that game against Whitworth, I thought that we were doing extremely well for about 45 to 55 minutes before we concede the 2 goals. And the way we've been trying to play, particularly getting the ball from our back line into our midfield and working it forward, trying to have confidence in all 3 areas of the field, showed well up until we conceded the first goal. So, we've gotten a lot better this year at trying to manage the ball in certain areas of the field and not have to defend as much for lengthy periods of time. In the Whitworth game, that worked for us all the way up until we conceded the first goal. Then after the second, things kind of came off the rails a little bit. It was the exact opposite against Whitman, where against Whitman on Sunday, we played, I would say, fairly average for the first 20 minutes. Then we concede 2 goals. come in at halftime, remind the guys it's only 2-0.
Right.
And they come out in the second half and they play a brilliant second half. And I think Whitman had trouble getting out of their own half. Our press was far better in terms of just the energy and the organization. Our ability on the ball increased exponentially as we went through the second half against Whitman. I think the shot count finished pretty even against Whitman in the second half. And when they had shots, it was because they were countering with two guys more often than not. When we were stretched in possession and trying to really dominate Whitman in terms of taking up certain areas of the field. And so the first half against Whitworth, the second half against Whitman, there were a lot of positives, but in each of the halves where there weren't as many positives, it was those 4-minute stretches where we just let our guard down, didn't do as well as we needed to, and lost some individual battles.
The first time you guys played Whitman this year, you were able to withstand pretty consistent pressure from them throughout the match, but of course you were able to get the result you wanted in that one.
Right.
Through that first 45, what did you see differently compared to that first match, even though you didn't give up the goal in that one, where they were kind of controlling possession, and just the kind of wiping away the results from both Whitman matches? What did you see in contrast to the first time you guys played them and got the win?
Yeah, it was in the areas of the field where we gave up the ball this time around. You give up the ball in really dangerous areas of the field against any college team, then you have a higher likelihood of conceding in those moments. If I remember right, I think the first goal that we conceded was a player on the ball that, I think it was the first goal, it might have been the second, a player for Linfield on the ball that drifted inside about 25-30 yards from our own goal and was outnumbered and didn't read the situation right, concedes possession, and at that point all it takes is one pass to beat a stretched back line for Linfield, and the player's in, and it's a finish. So it's about where you concede possession if you get into trouble, and knowing that when you're in those situations you simply can't do it. It's either a clearance or it's a ball to an open player in a different part of the field that is less dangerous to lose the ball in. And so when you're a team trying to learn how to actually play the game with more possession, you are going to find yourself in difficult spots at times, and you've got to know how to get out of those without conceding anything really dangerous. And so we did that against Whitman there when we got the 1-0 result. We didn't give the ball away in really bad spots, and we gave it away a couple times in bad spots here, which resulted in 2 goals against.
And as we've talked about all season, I got to imagine that changing that and being able to take care of the ball in those spots with consistency, it really just comes down to experience and maturity, right?
Yeah. I mean, if you don't get punished, you don't know how to try and change it.
Sure.
And so we got punished this weekend for some bad decisions, and it came for some players that now know how to try and avoid that, or at least they should know how to avoid that going forward. And the experience hopefully gives them what they need. I mean, it was said to me a long time ago that when you don't get what you want, you get experience. And so that's what we got this weekend. We got more experience.
I like that. So Pacific and George Fox this weekend, and those are 2 matches that were pretty chippy the first time around, particularly that George Fox match in Newburgh. What do the guys have to do to keep a high fire and bring a lot of edge to that match, but keep their heads on their shoulders at the same time and not get caught up in the intensity and physicality of those matches?
Yeah, I think it's interesting you bring up being chippy. I actually went and looked at the stats for yellow cards and red cards for the conference this year, and it's been amazing how many cards have been given out just conference wide. We're somewhere in the middle of the pack. There's a couple of schools ahead of us that have had more yellows than us. I think 5 or 6 teams in the conference out of 8 have had a red card. There's just been, I think sometimes the chippiness is actually something that is brought by not necessarily the players, but by other people that create the environment. So, I think away to Pacific, to be honest with you, I don't expect it to be chippy at all. Brandon, I think, does a really great job with those guys in terms of teaching them how to play the game without really having to try and be some sort of brute or out-of-control player on the field. I have a lot of respect for Brandon over there at Pacific. I think he's doing great with that program. I realize they don't have the record that they want this year, but they're going to play the game professionally with the right kinds of behaviors for college athletes. So I think that game will just be a straight-up good affair between the 2 teams that are really working hard at trying to change their programs. And then home to George Fox, we hope that it'll be the same without the chippiness, just because we'll be here. It'll be in our environment, which we can't control what opponents do or officials do, or if they bring some fans with them that try and elevate the aggravation in the game, then we can't control that. But what we can do is make sure that we continue to try and keep our own level of frustration and level of excitement at a manageable place, so that we can play the game out in a professional manner. But they'll be good games. You know, Fox and Pacific, they are extremely hungry for their first win. They are playing everybody really hard right now, and we're looking forward to those as good contests coming into the weekend.